They went.
All right. Now, does everyone see my water conservation slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is where we're going to be hopefully working from. All right. Today, we're going to be talking about conserving water, and we will look at some ways to work with our climate, some of the adapting to some of the changes we see, and still be able to garden well. Today's agenda is going to cover three segments. First one is going to be on collecting water, after which we will take a short break and switch speakers to Wendy Savinsky, who's going to tell us about rain gardens. And then we'll come back and finish up with using water wisely. Please put any questions during each session into the chat box. We're going to have someone monitoring that, so we'll try and answer your questions. And as you know, this session is being recorded, so you will be able to review it again later if you choose to, or for those who have missed it, it will be available. Now, from news reports, we know that there are disaster level changes in weather patterns all over the world, some currently going on in our own country. The availability of fresh water has become a serious problem in some areas as they experience extended periods of extreme drought. Locally in our counties, the changes are a little less drastic. We are seeing some gradually longer summers and a little bit drier perhaps during that period, and less predictable rain patterns than we maybe saw historically. The blue line on this graph from the Ag WeatherNet site is the accumulated rain over the period of a year. This particular graph is the Montesano collection for the year of 2022. Notice that this line is nearly flat all the way from the middle of June to the middle of October. This is the summer dry period for us. This year's graph is fairly similar, and although it seemed like June was a little cooler and perhaps we had more rain, we really did not accumulate a lot of measurable water during that period. Now, the total amount of rain for the year is shown on the right-hand side of this graph, and you can see this is over 60 inches, which is pretty normal. But again, a reminder, most of it falls within an 8-month period. So we still get lots of rain, anywhere from 60 to 100 inches, depending on where you are in our counties. The summer dry season means that gardeners might need to supply water, extra water to some plants during that extended dry season. Our local water supplies do not start with snowpack in the mountains, filling reservoirs that we can actually see the water levels. We depend on groundwater. This is not visible, but it is every bit as much a limited resource. Recent years have seen an increase in our population, uh, which puts a greater strain on the water supplies, especially in municipal areas. And water has become fairly expensive, and local infrastructure in some areas is rather struggling to keep up with the demand. This could eventually lead to some limits on growth, new housing, or on the allowed water usage in areas experiencing extreme stress. So, with all our rain, it seems logical that maybe we should collect some during the rainy time and save it for the dry. Just seems reasonable. This is a topic that you're likely to get asked by other people as you are master gardeners, and it's something you probably want to address in your own garden. So, let's go through some of these
Things
considerations
about
about
um,
um, using a rainwater collection system. All right. Here's a calculation. I know math. Um, but it's for determining the amount of water you could potentially collect from a roof. This assumes that all the water from this roof on a 1,000 square foot building will go into the collection downspout. Now, if you have a roof that has a center peak or gable, you would do a rough estimate of the area of the roof that actually is going into the downspout that you are using to collect, and then you would adjust your square footage accordingly. As you can see from the line, the calculation, inches times the square foot of the roof, zero point 0.6 is the calculation that moves it from square foot to gallons. And that gives us the number of gallons collected. If we collected all of the 60 inches of rain on a 2,000 square foot building, which is sort of an average type house, we would have the possibility of 72,000 gallons in 1 year. Yeah, we have the potential to collect a lot of rain, but realistically, storing that large of a volume just doesn't work. There are some legal aspects to consider in collecting rain. Policy on rainwater collection in Washington State was set by the Department of Ecology. The limits are fairly basic. They're designed to protect the rainfall that is needed to replenish our groundwater and also to support our local water, surface water, such as our rivers and our streams. Rain barrels are not considered a part of the water rights limitations, so they do not require a permit under that restriction. Water, it may only be collected from buildings that have other uses. You cannot build a standalone collection device. This would prevent or decrease the loss of the water necessary to replenish groundwater. They're limited to local use. You must use them on the water collected on the same property where it was collected. And this, of course, would prevent any large-scale collection operations that might be wishing to collect water in one area and send it off for use to perhaps a municipal area or maybe to sell water. It is counties and towns are able to further develop restrictions on their own as they find necessary in their immediate area. So before installing any water collection, it's good to check with both your town and your county to verify that you are within code for any restrictions. Just a little aside, the state of Colorado is considerably different than ours, but they have been seeing serious depletion of their groundwater from overuse, mostly from overpumping, and this goes back several decades. So looking up their state code, they only allow any one household to have a total of 110 gallon barrel rain collection capacity. It's just pretty limited. I mean, that's 2 barrels in a household. They are really doing everything they can to protect the replenishment of that groundwater supply. And finally, untreated rainwater is not considered safe for human consumption. We'll talk a little more about that later, but any questions about using rainwater collection for supplying household use or drinking water should be referred to the county. This is not an area that master gardeners have expertise on. It's not within what we normally want to try and answer. Now, the rain might be free, but there is a cost to building a way to collect and store it. So common to use recycled 55-gallon barrels like the one shown here. If you do use a recycled barrel, make sure that it is a food grade and has not been used for anything other than food products. Any barrel that was previously used for a petroleum or chemical product cannot be washed clean enough. They still retain trace amounts of chemicals in the construction of the barrel, and these will be slowly released into your water over time. Now, purchasing a tank, a new tank, can start out at cost less than $100, but it can range up to several thousands of dollars depending on the size and features that you include in your system. The next thing we need is a filter. Of course, you don't want all the debris that might land on your roof to fall into your tank. There, it might possibly physically block the outlet, or at worst case, enhance biological contaminants, providing a food source for some of them. Different types of filters are available. They start all the way from the gutter. You could actually cover the gutter that is feeding this downspout so that no debris even starts into the system. Here we see a downspout inline filter. You can see the downspout has been cut to fall in through this filter and continue on down. This sit down a little lower where you might be able to see it. And if you see, the design is slanted, so it would actually encourage any debris to wash off. The final place you might put one is actually on the top of the tank itself at the inlet of the tank. Again, more readily available. And some of that just designs on the, depends on the design of your tank. The next piece you'll want is something called a diverter. This allows you to choose whether you're going to collect the rainwater coming down that downspout into your collection system or not. A time when you might not want to would be the first rain of the season in the fall. This would wash off any accumulated dirt or pollutants that have collected on your roof over the summer. So you probably don't want that water in your tank to be used. The next thing would be an overflow. We get way more rain than our rain barrels can handle. So it's important to have a way to direct the excess away from the foundation of the building. You can see here a white pipe that's off the top of the tank directed to a splash block, which of course then directs the water away from the foundation. And then finally, you'll need a way to dispense it. The most simple way is a spigot, as you see here. This could be used to fill watering containers, or maybe even connect to a line for a gravity feed. If your site and design provide elevation to support a gravity feed. Here we see some rather sturdy looking cement blocks used to elevate this barrel some. Makes it a little easier to use the spout, as well as perhaps providing a slant for gravity. Keep in mind, if you build a support structure for your tank, a 55-gallon barrel, when full, weighs 460 pounds. So you definitely need to take that into account and make sure that what you build is able to support that weight safely and prevent tipping over. Some large tank systems actually come with a motorized pump that can pressurize the delivery. So, depending on what you're willing to invest, there are a lot of options out there. Now, as we looked at this and what you would have to account for or purchase, you can see that it is not likely that just from saving water on your water bill, that you're going to pay for this system in any reasonable amount of time. It is a little bit more of an investment into our environment and the bigger picture than ourselves. And realizing that every little bit of water saved, if we can get a lot of people saving a little bit, and over time, it will add up and make an impact on our water systems. When I gave a rain collection workshop a few years ago, one of the big questions that came up was, does it have to be ugly? Um, and I kind of agree. Here we see three different sizes of water collection tanks. Very utilitarian, but maybe not exactly the look I want in my landscape. Um, but, really, it doesn't have to be. Here's some decorative ideas. There's a bunch on the market that are very decorative barrels, or if you go online, you will find examples of how very creative some people can be in disguising their water barrels. Everything from just simply painting the barrels, putting covers or surrounds on them, making them fit in with their particular landscape decor, using them as plant stands, putting, potted plants on top of them so that they do a little better job of fitting into the aesthetics of what you want your yard to be. As we are talking about collecting water, we need to consider some contaminants that might come along with this method. Let's start with biological ones. And of course, this is standing water. So you definitely need to make sure that it is screened or completely closed system so that we prevent mosquito proliferation. Now, the winds that we have, a pretty regular wind around here, can pick up and carry both bacteria and fungal elements along with the dust. And these can be deposited on your roof pretty much all season long, but perhaps even more so during the summer period. Of course, any small animals or maybe tree branches that overhang your house in any way can definitely drop things on your roof, leave animal droppings. Again, potentially carrying biologics with them. Now, of course, many of these may not be harmful to us, but there is always the risk of ones that can cause human disease being included. Now, there are also a number of chemical contaminants that we might want to consider. Smoke and pollution. It's visible particles, and there's chemicals, of course, mixed in with the particulate matter. It's possible that pesticides used nearby could drift and end up, even though if you're not aware of them, they can be deposited on your roof. And the wind that we have again can sometimes carry chemicals fairly long distances. So it's not just local use that we maybe would have to be considering. All of these, of course, have the potential of being washed off the roof and into your rain barrel. Another source of contaminants can actually be the roofing material that you choose to use. Uh, Rougher textures of roofs tend to trap more chemicals and particulates for a longer period of time. It's a little harder for the wind to blow them off, so that you are likely to accumulate more over a period of time. The actual material of the roof, metal roofing, as shown here, um, actually can leach both cadmium and zinc into your water. They can leach for quite a long period of time. Now, if you have metal roofing that has an enamel coating on it, it actually seals it enough that it very much decreases this risk. Three-tab roofing, shown on the right, very popular choice in many areas, is usually made from asphalt, and this can leach lead into your water supply. Wood shakes might look like a more natural, but oftentimes they are chemically treated to prevent decay. And this treatment typically is a copper-based biocide. And of course, this can also leach over time. The last picture on the lower right is something called zinc strip. And you may see these installed along a roof line. And these are meant to leach out zinc over a period of time. They're installed to decrease or prevent the buildup of moss and other organisms on your roof. So all of these have a potential of adding chemicals over an extended period of time. Now, one aside here, the studies that I found suggested that other than high levels of zinc, most of these heavy metals are not picked up by your plants in sufficient quantities to harm them. In general, even if you're using them on food crops, they are not picked up and stored in the plant material uh, that you would expect to be eating. So, yes, they are contaminants, but they probably will not harm your plants. Now, of course, all of these contaminants reinforces the fact that it is non-potable. It's not safe for human consumption unless it undergoes some extensive treatment. The best use for it really is considered ornamentals and flowers in your landscape. It works very well for them. Using it in the vegetable garden is also possible. Most plants don't accumulate it, as I said, they don't accumulate enough that you would be concerned about eating them, but you do want to prevent putting the water on the outside of the plants. Do not splash it onto the edible portion of the leaves. Deliver the irrigation water in a vegetable garden directly to the soil. And some sources are a little on whether or not you should use it on root crops, mainly because it's a lot harder to wash them clean enough to really remove all traces from the outside of the roots. And again, make sure that any produce coming out of your garden is washed thoroughly before use. So the other half of the calculation question is, how big of a tank will I need to meet my expectations, you know? Well, we could have up to a 12-week dry season, but we don't normally have to water that whole period of time. Recommended watering is anywhere from 1 to 2.5 inches of water per week. And this would be very dependent on the type of plants you're watering, the heats, the amount of sun exposure, and your expectations of how well watered you want to keep those plants. So the calculation is very much like the one for collecting. It's the area that you're going to water times the amount of water you plan to apply each week. The conversion factor from square feet to gallons, only this time we're going from gallons to square feet. And it will give you the number of gallons you need per week. So in a worst case scenario, a 4 by 8 foot watered 2 inches of water in a week would use 38.4 gallons a week. Now, if for some reason you're actually watering that bed for the whole 12 weeks, that comes up to a whopping 460 gallons for one bed. Kind of overwhelming. Well, let's be a little more realistic. All right. Let's take that same 4 by 8 foot bed and with very conservative water use, we're only going to give it 1 inch of water per week. And we're going to say that the beginning of the summer was rainy enough, or maybe the crop doesn't last more than 8 weeks. So we're only going to end up watering for 8 weeks. Doing this calculation, we come out to a total of 154 gallons for that irrigation period. This is probably more in line with what most people would be using, but it is still a fair amount of water, and it shows you that standard tanks in general may not meet all of our needs. All right. Now, the line at the bottom indicates that a summer shower of just a 1/4 inch of water, calculating, and we don't always think about the summer showers helping us out that much, but they do. It could give us as much as 150 gallons for every 1,000 feet of rain collection space. Uh, Keeping in mind that there will be some loss to the re-wetting of the working surface and the whole system. And you may or may not want to collect that water due to the rinsing off of contaminants. That would be a choice that you could make. If you don't think they're a big issue, then you might want to go ahead and collect that water and you can use it in landscape areas. If you're more concerned about dust and contaminants off your roof, you may want to divert that water and not collect it. Well, that is a choice you have, and it can supplement a little shower in the summertime can actually supplement the total amount of water that we collect using our rain system. Now, in closing, this all seems kind of complicated. It seems kind of expensive. And the question is, why should I do this, you know? Well, keep in mind that there are many people who do use rain collection systems very effectively and very safely. It just takes a little bit of work and a little bit of care. But being aware of these details can help you make the decisions on how you set up and use this water. And it can also help you answer the questions and share the information to the public when you get, because rain collection, like I said, it's a very logical thing, and people do think about it and they will ask about it. So these are some concerns that you probably want to share or make sure people are considering as they are setting up a rain barrel system. And again, it any one person collecting water probably isn't going to have a huge impact. But when you get a lot of people collecting even a little bit each, it'll add up to a lot for our environment. All right, do we have questions? Elizabeth suggested that we have each of
If anyone's interested in sharing some questions, go ahead and unmute and pose a question.
say what? Elizabeth suggested that we have the trainees. Yep. Okay.
Okay, Jan, I don't see any questions coming out.
All right, one suggestion we had is just we have a few minutes here where we finished up a little bit early, which is fine. Kind of plan to do that, but can we do a little round robin introduction from the Zoom screen? If I'm not sure exactly how we can make that work, but it would be really nice if we could do so.
Stop sharing first and then maybe. Lynn. I am, and so can you unmute and stop sharing, and then we can see everything. Yeah. Are you unmuted? Yeah. Sharon, can you stop sharing for a minute so then everybody can see everybody a little bit larger? Or Jan, I guess, sorry.
Jan, if you can just reduce take your
Stop sharing.
point down, and then it'll be full screen. Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
Right at the bottom where it says share screen, you can unshare. Or at the top, one of the two. It'll be at the top of your computer, maybe.
You're saying I'm still sharing. I'm not sharing. How do I stop? Stop sharing this. You're not sharing right now. Okay, my computer indicates I'm not sharing.
You're not muted.
There we go.
There we go.
I went ahead and stopped your sharing, Jan.
I don't know how to stop. Thank you. Because I didn't see an option to do so. And it's like, okay, what am I missing? All right. I don't know if someone want to direct this as to getting all our trainees to introduce themselves. I mean, obviously, hi there, I'm Jan. Obviously, I've been talking at you along.
I'm willing to do that, Jan.
Elizabeth, would you please do so?
I sure will. And what I'm going to do is I'm looking at my own personal screen here, and I see Gail Dutton to my left, probably, yeah, that left. And we'll start with Gail.
Hello, everybody. I'm Gail Dutton, and we actually do collect water from our roof, but ours goes into a pond for firefighting purposes. So we have about what is it, Randy? 120,000 gallon pond that is basically rainwater from our roof collection.
That's great, Gail. Thank you. Next on my screen is Laura Lee.
I am Laura Lee, and I live in Elma, and I also collect rainwater in 55-gallon barrels. I currently have 12 of them that are sitting there waiting for me to figure out how to use them in the garden.
We'll hear the report later.
Yeah.
Okay, skipping over Jen and going to Jenny. And could you guys tell us, I appreciate knowing you're from Elma, Laura Lee, so let us know where you're from too.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm from Oysterville, and we live on well water, so we're always trying to figure out how to conserve and water our garden wisely. So we've looked into rain barrels. I'm not sure that we could collect enough in a regular rain barrels to be able to provide all we need, but it would certainly help.
Thank you, Jenny. And I've got Randy. Randy, oh, there you go. You're unmuted, Randy, but I'm not hearing you.
I don't even see him.
I don't either. Yeah, just
Gail, if you unmute, you can
Okay.
tell us what's happening.
Yeah, okay. Randy, here. Come here.
Yeah, basically what we have is we have two ponds. Our gutter feeds into a small pond, which we have a bunch of koi, and then have an overflow that goes into the 120,000 gallon larger pond. Fortunately, we don't have city water. We just have a well, and we have plenty of water for almost everything that we need. So we don't need to use buckets. We just use the ground.
Yeah, Randy, turn toward the computer. Turn toward Gail's. There you go. Now we see who you are.
Well, we have two computers. So my computer over there.
I know. I see what's going on.
It's my audio, but apparently it doesn't pick up this sound very well.
Okay. All right. And Randy, where are you from?
Well, Montesano.
Montesano. Thank you.
So we kind of live in the same spot.
I got that. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to skip over you, Val. You're going to be introduced later, okay? And now we've got Pegbo. That's how your screen shows you. You need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Peggy Botello from Ocean Shores,
Okay.
just a trainee.
Just a trainee. No, you're one of the most important people in the world right now. Thank you. Rita?
Hi, I'm Rita Akins, and I live in Long Beach, Washington, and we do not collect rainwater. We have an irrigation well, and it seems to serve our purpose for what we need water for.
Okay.
That is my dog having a fit in the background. He sees something outside.
Uh-oh. Thank you. Tammy?
Hi, I'm Tammy Westfall, and I am in Ocean Park, and I am currently considering doing water retention. We do have a pond that collects water in the winter, which fills completely. Currently building a greenhouse and thinking about putting gutters on it. So I've taken notes about all the different techniques for collecting water.
Very good. Thanks, Tammy. Rhonda, I'm going to skip over you and go to Nancy.
Hi, I'm Nancy Bushman. I'm here in Ocean Shores. And I am not currently collecting rainwater, but I want to. One reason is for all the reasons that we've talked about here today, conservation and having water for my plants. But another reason is, as I was thinking about as you were talking, I wasn't considering really doing a rain barrel, but I am now with an overflow system. There's a house being built next door to me and they're below grade. And I see when the rainy season was upon us that water was doing as it should, going away from my foundation correctly down and away, but kind of helping to flood this new house that doesn't have any, it has not even been brought up to grade yet at all. It's kind of at a standstill right now. It's kind of sad. The owner died before she could complete the build. So it's just kind of at a standstill right now. And I just kind of want to proactively make sure that I don't contribute to any more flooding of her foundation. It's not hers anymore, but the foundation, by having my rainwater, because gosh, a lot goes down there. I mean, probably much more than can fill a 55-gallon barrel. I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about when it really rains around here. So I'm really glad that I've learned about some of this, because I'd like to set that up with an overflow system and, maybe a French drain also, just to be sure. A French drain kind of at my fence line that goes back, collects maybe any overflow and kinds of sends it back into the wetlands behind my house. So
very cool.
Okay.
Sounds really good, Nancy, and very considerate of you.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, skipping over Elena and Sharon to Michael. Michael, we can't see you, but could you unmute yourself? Michael's on break. I'll come back to Michael. How about John? John T. John, you need to unmute yourself or come back from your break. I'll get back to him too. Joanna? Here you go.
Hi, I'm Joanna Oliver, and I live in Seaview. My husband, while our house was under construction, built a very nice underground water collection and disperse away from our house system. We're the downside of our next door neighbor, and we saw before we ever, really started building that our property would have a lot of standing water when we have our atmospheric rivers and so on. So he was, he jumped right in and did that. So collecting water, it's collecting underground and being taken away from us. But we do have raised beds and gravel and bark around in pathways and so on. And I seem to be able to keep up with the watering. There's a little bit we have wetlands behind us and down to the beach on our property. And there's woods, and I've planted a few things in view of our house that need to be watered a little bit. It's a little bit difficult, but I've managed to manage that without too much water. So I think we're good. I don't think we'll ever do a rain barrel situation. My large watering can collects rain when it rains, so I use that. But that's about it.
Okay, super. Thanks, Joanna. And Michael, coming back to you, and you were not on break. Your mute didn't work.
Yeah, I just keep pushing buttons and nothing ever happens. But anyway, I spend some time with my friends in Hawaii, and that's the only way they've got water for their house at all is by collecting rainwater. And they use ultraviolet light to kill all the bacteria in it. So I wanted to add that little piece there that's possible. But I've got a house back in Missouri that I'm actually setting up to use the rainwater to do barrels on the back. And the system is kind of interesting because the piping goes from one barrel to the other at the base of the barrels, so that all you have to do is fill one barrel and it just fills all the barrels all the way across. And that is really convenient. It took the house didn't have gutters on it when I bought it. So when I had the gutters put on, I just had them all taken to the same corner of the house. And sometimes there's a little bit of overflow when the weather really pours, but it works very effectively.
And Michael, did I miss where you're from?
I'm right here in Ocean Park. Well, actually north of it in Surfside, but this is a house that I've got
in Missouri. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And those of you who may be out of sync or out of step on your screen, I will get to you because you're not out of step on my screen. I'm going back to John. John, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Then we'll go to that, John. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm John Radcliffe from Montesano. And just wanted to let everyone know that I currently already have 2 water retention tanks in use to use to keep my chickens with in water during the summertime.
Very cool. Thank you, John. Going back to Lisa.
Hi. Yes, I live up North River, but I'm in the South Bend trainee group. Interesting. It's amazing to me in this country that it rains so much that we run out of water. Last year, we ran into panic because we ran out of water at the early July. I'm used to running out of water September-ish, meaning I've always have to stagger like dishwasher and washing machine and irrigating and all that. So we've been collecting food grade totes to build a pretty large water retention system, but actually it'll be coming from a spring that is coming out underneath a building, which is really inconvenient. And so that's kind of what we haven't got it all in place yet. We've been collecting the totes, but the goal is a 10,000 gallon system. I don't know if we'll make it that far, but yeah, looking forward to this. Is all very interesting, and just the 55 gallons is tough. So we're hoping to build a big system. So
great, Lisa. Super. Yeah. Sue? Can you unmute? How about if I come back to you? You search for your mute button and I'll come back to you. Sean, would you like to go? Okay, Sean, I'm not hearing anything. You're not muted, but I can't hear you.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
You are unmuted.
Okay. Well, I'm Sue Epler. I live in Westport, but I'm part of the South Beach or the South Bend group. And we actually have had a water barrel on the back of our garage for quite a number of years, even though we were just part-time here for a long time. And my husband hooked up a pump, and we feed the water. It can pump water out to the back of our property. So it'll run hoses, and we just have to do a little different configuration of the pumping. And we do have city water, so we don't really run out of water, but I like to use up, the free water first, as the summer goes on. We just had an inch and a half of rain when we had that big rain tantrum a week or so ago, a couple of weeks ago. So we're utilizing that, and we've built a little frame, a little house around it, so you can't really tell. It's on the back of the garage, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, we use that.
Super. That's great. Okay. I don't remember what time we're supposed to start up again. We're only halfway done, so if we can move this quicker. And I apologize to those of you at the end of the line here. But let's go to Judy.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Judy Canaday, live in McCleary, Washington. I do not have a rain barrel collection because I wasn't sure of the contaminants, so I've learned some today.
Great. Okay. Diane. Diane, you're not unmuted yet.
There you go. It's been an interesting topic. I live in the city of Aberdeen, so I have city water, and it's just me at home. So I think this is a great concept, but I'm not a handyman kind of person, so I probably won't implement it. I'll just keep using my city water.
Super. Well, thank you, Diane, and welcome to the class. Sean, let's try you again.
Okay, I'm Sean.
You're on.
And our rain goes right into the koi pond.
Okay, right into the pond.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see who did. Pam.
Hi, this is Pam, and I'm in Montesano. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. No, I don't use rain barrels. I looked into it, but the cost factor was beyond what I wanted to use.
Okay. Thank you, Pam. James. Are you James or Jim?
James.
Okay.
Did I unmute okay?
You are unmuted just fine.
Yeah, James Pettis. I'm part of the Ocean Shores group, and I currently don't have any kind of collection system. I would like to do it, but in my situation, I don't think it's really going to have an area. I've got to find an area to make it practical, and I haven't worked that out yet.
Okay. Okay, and I'm going to ask Harold to introduce himself. And do you guys mind if you actually show who you are so that we have more than a voice to connect to you, with you? So this is Harold. Harold needs to unmute, and if he can make his face show, that would be great.
I don't know how to make my face show, but it's Georgia.
It's Georgia? Well,
yeah.
All right, you just confused the heck out of me. Okay, Georgia.
Yeah. Harold is my husband.
Okay. You're using his computer?
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't know how to get my picture on there, but
that's
I'll
okay.
keep talking. I live in Aberdeen, and I live in a house that is new to me, and I've brought up some concerns about the amount of rainwater after hearing how much rain is coming off the roof, and where we're distributing the rainwater on this property, because I live next to a riparian area, and I have some concerns about that now. So there's a lot to think about.
There is a lot to think about. Thank you. Sherry?
Hi, I'm from the Ocean Shores group, and we don't have any rain barrel usage at this point. Mike's building me a greenhouse, so perhaps we'll do a barrel so that we can at least take the rain to water the greenhouse. So
super.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Anna?
I'm here.
Anna, can you unmute and give us a little bit more about who you are?
I'm Anna Allen. I'm from Ocean Park. I don't do rainwater. We're on city water. It's for me and my husband. So I have never tried rainwater collection. So I'm a trainee.
Okay. Thank you, Anna.
Did you see my picture or not?
Nope, I can't see your picture.
How do you use the picture?
You know, we'll help you with that during the next presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And John?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep. Can't see
Okay.
you.
My modest garden is watered by well water. And on the farm I live on, they've got these guns, these sprayer guns, you've probably seen them, that are, they get water from two ponds or lagoons. And after every cutting, they're sprayed thoroughly so they grow and they get nutrients. In addition to that, it's low area, so we get a lot of mist and fog in that particular area. So that little bit of moisture adds to the growing of mainly grass on that property.
Thank you, John. John, and where do you live?
Porter.
Porter. Okay, so you're Grace Harbor County. Sherry.
I think we already introduced me.
Okay, I'm sorry, then I'm getting out of order here. Some of you guys are moving around on my list here. So I have another John, a John R, not John Radka. Oh, it's Josh.
Yeah, that's get my camera on.
There you go.
There you go. That's me. Yeah, I'm Josh Reichel. I'm in El Waco. I am working on my greenhouse to have a rain collection system. I use my actual house. I have my gutters go into like a drain field system. I'm on a hill, so in the winter months it's not too wet. Well, it's wet, but it goes on a slope, so it's not too saturating. But I use the rainwater from my house and use it like a drain field across half my lawn. So even throughout the drought of the summer, it's basically green, fresh lawn, and it goes in my orchard too, so all my trees get nice and water without me having to touch it. So kind of more of a passive.
Okay, cool. I got Gwendolyn.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And you have a very nice picture.
Oh, thank you. I have one small barrel, 30 gallon on my deck, because I have a lot of plants on the deck, but I plan to expand, and I have designed larger systems for community gardens in Texas. So I prior to moving up here and retiring, I worked in the civil engineering field. So I'm very cognizant and aware of designs of rain gardens and stormwater systems and distributions and stuff. So
very cool. I am always delighted to hear what our trainees, what skills they bring to the Master Gardener program. So thank you. Alana, you were not forgotten. You're just way down the bottom of my list.
Hello. We actually don't have any kind of rain collection. We live in Lacey, so we're just on the city water. And that's about it. Yeah.
Okay, I am at the end of my list. I may have forgotten someone. Is there a trainee that has not introduced themselves? Okay, then I'm going to turn it back over to Jan or Kelly, whoever's next talking.
Okay, at this time, our schedule says we should be taking a break. According to my clock, it is 9:55. So let's take a 15-minute break. If everyone would be back at 10 minutes after 10, we will start with Valerie's presentation. So see you all in 15.
Dan?
Zabisky, most people call me Val. I've been a master gardener since 2019 and started in Kitsap County. And that's where this original rain garden handbook was written in conjunction with the Department of Ecology and the Kitsap Conservation District. So that's where I got the interest in building rain gardens. And then I discovered that there was a certification program. Here is and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but this book was the handbook was published originally in 2013. It has been revised. And it's been taken over by Snohomish County Extension. So I am part of the certification program and completed this a year ago, January, and started my rain garden in February. And I'll talk about this a little bit later on at the end because there's a new website that contains all of this information, which has been previously really hard to find. So, rain gardens, what are they? And Jan just finished talking about water retention systems. A rain garden is not expected to retain stormwater. A rain garden is a filtration system. And before we had extensive building, the natural ground and the forest took care of the filtering of stormwater. And it went through a natural filtering process before it hit the aquifers or our streams and rivers. And now with extensive building, there was a huge study in King County, and most of the pollution in Puget Sound was brought in by stormwater draining directly into Puget Sound. And that's where most of the pollutants came from. And Jan mentioned all of the things that can pollute our water. And from roads, we have tires degrading, we have antifreeze, we have oil products, we have a lot of toxins just coming from our roads. So in a residential setting, if we each could have a small rain garden to filter roofs, a lot of toxins come off of our roofs directly from the rainwater that collects it all from the atmosphere. So if we could all build even a small rain garden, it would help to filter the water that is provided by our rainfall. And so all of the information that I'm giving you today comes directly from the Rainwater Handbook. And it's divided into 4 chapters. The first one is planning. Second one is building. Third one is planting. And the 4th chapter is maintaining. So the planning stage obviously is the most important. And you see this would best, as WSU and the Department of Ecology sees it, the planning is best done in December, January, and February, because that's when we have our highest rainfall. And then prime time to work the soil is May, June, July, and August. And then the best time to plant is September, October, November. So we're coming up on the best planting time. So this is a cross section of what a rain garden is. It's an actual depression in your native soil. And if you have highly quickly draining soil like I do in Elma, you don't need to use amended soil. Well, let me put it this way. You don't need to have special soil. What I did was dug out this depression and mixed my native soil with a lot of compost, and they suggest a 35-65, 35 being compost mix. And you can see the water flows in from the roof. In my case, I don't have any sidewalks or driveways draining into it. And there's a little area for retention, and then there's an overflow in case there's heavy rainfall that won't drain sufficiently. So the planning is, the first thing we need to do is check how quickly my slide says what not to do. Don't place your rain gardens within 10 feet of your building foundation. Be sure you call 811 to locate utilities. You don't want to place it near an edge of a steep slope because it could erode that. Obviously, you don't want to dig a rain garden over a septic system or drain field or near wells. So this was what my yard looked like when I first moved in my old house. And you can see here I have a metal skirt, which means that my house is built on pier and plank. So I don't have a conventional foundation. So I wanted to be sure I could divert all of the runoff from my downspouts away from this area. So that gives me this distance between the skirt where the foundation should be, which isn't, and this side of the sidewalk is just enough. It's just about 10 feet. So I know I'm compliant with what WSU prescribes to do with placement. You can see it's all weeds. It's very compacted. And the whole yard was like this. So I have 19 feet between the sidewalk and my neighbor's fence, which was the area I choose to make the rain garden. I chose to make the rain garden in this area of my yard because the rain garden would fit nicely in this particular area. I already had called the locator when I moved in, so I knew all of my gas and water and electric and everything else was on the other side of the house. So I was free to dig. This is completely flat, so I didn't have to consider any slopes. And obviously it's not, so I'm not going to erode this at all and hope and be afraid that water is going to run into my neighbor's yard. So the manual suggests that we need to consider state and local requirements, and Jan went over this too. And in the handbook, there's an appendix which states all of the areas that have local requirements. Grace Harbor and Pacific County does not have any requirements. So there's no permitting and there's no direct instructions from either of our counties. So the first thing we need to do is dig a test hole, and they suggest 2 feet deep and 2 feet in diameter. So you want to do this during the best time to do it would be in the rainy season, and you can test, and then you put a measuring device like a yardstick in your hole, and as it when it's full enough so you can actually test the drainage, you can measure how many inches per hour it will drain. So soil texture plays a big role in this, and sandy is well draining, clay is poor draining. I happen to have very rocky soil, and it's pretty decent soil. It was originally the bed of the Chehalis River and also the end of our glaciers here. So I have a lot of that kind of material in my soil. So determining the ponding depth means if you have poor draining soil, you'd want to consider a 12-inch. If you have fast draining soil, you'd want to consider a 6-inch testing hole. So you fill the hole up with water or wait until the rain fills it up, and then you can go out and look at it once every hour to see how quickly it's draining. So this is a very awful slide, but this shows a 12-inch hole, and it has a measuring device so you can easily read the amount of drainage. And this is a 6-inch hole, which explains the same thing. So in determining the drainage rate, the handbook includes an extensive map, and you can see for all of our Western Washington areas. And this one, Hoquiam, Aberdeen, Montesano, here I am in Elma, South Bend, Raymond, and Pacific down to Long Beach and Ilwaco. So I want to find out, I want to get the color where I am, and I chose the dark green color. So then I go to the next the sizing chart, which talks about regions and they're color coded. So I chose a 12-inch hole, and I'm way over. I found out that that drainage hole drained in 3 hours. The whole thing drained in 3 hours. So no, I'm sorry, I misstated that. It drained in less than 2.5 hours. So this is the factor I want to use. And all of this is explained very carefully in the handbook. So remember the factor. So then you measure your drainage area. This particular sample shows a driveway, which is 15 feet by 30 feet. So that's a total of 450 square feet. The roof, this is kind of this drains into one gutter, this drains into one gutter. So this part is 20 feet and it's 15 feet. So we have 15 by 20 is 300 square feet, and 10 feet is this area, which is 40 feet long. So here are all of the measurements, and the total square footage is 1,150 square feet. So then if we take my drainage rate was 12 inches by 4 hours equals 3 inches per hour. And then back to the sizing factor, the square footage of my draining area is 1,600 square feet. So multiplied the size of my drainage area times the factor from the chart, I need a rain garden that's 272 square feet. So now I know how big I need it, and my area will accommodate that perfectly. So now I want to start to build. So the first thing I do is I'm a great artist, you can tell here. So I drew the shape. Here's the house, the walkway that goes from the front yard to the backyard, my neighbor's fence. So I placed the rain garden 20 feet from the fence, which is at the corner of the front corner of the house. And it goes like this is very close to 300 square feet, less than 300 square feet. And it goes pretty closely to the end of the house itself. So I have another space that's 20 feet on the north side of that. The rain garden is separated into the base, which is area 1, zone 1, the sides of the berm, which is zone 2, and the area above that's ground level would be zone 3. So I hired a local landscape crew that are familiar to many of us master gardeners, and they did a great job. So the first thing they did was scrape off all of the crummy grass, which looks pretty good here, but it really isn't. And then I drew lines where I wanted them to dig out. So this is what they dug out. And they had a very small machine that couldn't slant the edges. So the best they could do was cut it straight down. And I decided to use my native soil. So they stacked it up here. And this is probably a 25-yard pile of native soil. So the next, and I dug it a little bit less than 24 inches deep because I planned on using a foot of refill or backfill that was mixed with 35% compost. And then so what I did was strain out all the rocks down to about a quarter inch or a half inch. And you can see somewhere there are the rocks that I built sidewalks with. So this is the process of I had a pile of compost and I have the pile of native soil behind it. And I just kind of rudimentarily mixed them together. And then I started backfilling. And I made my berms first, and then I started backfilling. So this is the process. And you can see that's about a foot, and I've got about a foot above that. So now we get to plant after everything is full, or after the soil has been determined. And I have decided that I wanted this is how my rain garden looked for the garden tour, by the way, because I had it planted just in time for last year's garden tour. So you can see everything is pretty teeny, but I decided on native sedges and rushes for zone 1 because they're very adaptable to a lot of rain and not much rain and heat and cold. And so I thought this will be the best bet. And I found a native nursery here, which no longer exists. In fact, my order was the last one they filled before they went out of business. But they used the long 10-inch tubing to plant their grasses in. So I knew I would have long roots. The other thing I might mention about the mix of the fill of the soil is they recommend not to use mushroom compost because that energy goes to mostly to the top of the plant, and I wanted to make the root system as strong as possible. So eventually I would never have to water this again. And that's kind of happening already this summer. So in this picture, you can see, well, you can't see, I have Spirea Douglaceae, which is a riparian spirea. All of these are natives. Mahonia here. I've got a Sarcococa in there, which I love, but it's not native. I have bleeding heart. I have fringe cup over here. That I have. So I've got zone 3, and most of this is zone 3 because I don't have a very big zone 2. I didn't have room quite enough for that. So this is what it looked like about a month ago. I had Mahonia. This is Mahonia that I did. I'm sorry. This is Lupin, which was planted after the garden tour. You can see the Mahonia is huge. This is goat's beard. I've got deer fern. It's just amazing how it's grown. This is the other end, the north end, and I have 6 feet tall Monarda and lavender in there, which obviously isn't a native, but I have Spirea densiflora, which is in bloom in this picture. And I also have, I've got snowberry back here. Here's one penstemon that isn't doing very well, but I've got Pacific 9-bark and mock orange, fleabane, showy fleabane, and regular fleabane in zone 3. This is a current picture of, well, they're even bigger than this now. This was taken in June. Here's a fleabane and a Pacific 9-bark. This was the beginning planting. These are my Spirea densiflora. I've got aster. And one thing I wanted to do was have a biodiverse ecosystem. So I have plants in this rain garden that start blooming in January. And then there's a big bloom that comes on in March. And then the densiflora bloom later in both of the spireas bloom in June probably, and the asters, and I have goldenrod on the other side of the yard. Asters and goldenrod bloom in August and September, and they have blooms until it freezes. So what I do then is leave all the plant litter. I don't pick it up until it's time to clean up in the spring. And that provides habitat for insects and other things. I have a tremendous amount. I have just a whole slew of hummingbirds that come in my yard now. And I'm noticing more and more pollinators. I have bugs that I've never seen before. So I have a wide variety of insects and bugs that come in. These are the aster in bloom. This is if any of you have been to our Elma demo garden, this is amaranth, which is a beautiful bloom. So it just adds a lot of color. And the asters are one of the best pollinator attractors as decided by OSU PhD students. This is a newly added echinacea plant. So I don't know what the timing is about 25 to
We have some questions too.
11. Okay, so all of this handbook is very, very thorough, and it had the best part to me are the appendices, which have plant lists. The plant lists are extraordinary because they're all native. The plant lists are all native. They tell what zone to plant them in. I have one of these on the other side of the yard, and it says it's good in all 3 zones. It likes sun and part sun. It tells the size. It tells how big the footprint will be. And it talks about a little bit about what the plant looks like. So these are the ones that I have orange new, this carex, which is a sedge, can go in all 3 zones. It likes shade, it likes part sun, it likes full sun. And my yard has shade in the morning, full sun at noon, and part sun in the afternoon. So I have all 3 things going on. And I have a lot of Juncus acuminatus, which is very adaptable. Here are my Spirea densiflora and my Spirea douglaceae. So, and what I want to tell you is this is a new URL that takes you to a WSU extension webpage specifically for rain gardens. Be sure to don't put an S on rain gardens or you won't get here. If you spell it exactly like I show it on this slide, you'll come to this website, which has everything you want to know. And it talks more about stormwater research and extension. And there is a lot of work going on about this at WSU and conservation districts and our Department of Ecology. So after you get to the first page, you want to click on how to build a rain garden. And you'll end up on this page, which talks about building a rain garden in the city, the stormwater research and extension page. And here is the URL to get to the handbook. And you can print this, it's pretty big, or you can refer directly to it from this website. And the best part is the rain garden training program, which I took a little over a year ago, cost $100. They're offering it for free now. So all you have to do is click on this little box that says enroll for free, and you can find all the sign up information. And there you have it. I hope some of you decide to build these. Laura and Gwen were docents at the rain garden or at the garden tour with me a couple weeks ago, and Laura was telling me, who also came to see my rain garden on the garden tour last year. They live in Hoquiam, and they found they have a very high water table. So it doesn't sound to me like that would be good rain garden material. And the other thing I've heard about Aberdeen and Hoquiam is that they have clay. So if you have clay, you can decide to take some of that clay out and fill it with either mix it and put a lot of compost with it and backfill it, or buy a particular type of well-draining soil. So I guess I'm ready for questions. If
The first question was, Rhonda asked, how do you keep your neighbor's grass along the fence line from taking over? Did you use some sort of tall, deep installed border?
I weed whack that grass, that strip of grass that is pretty well died out now this time of year, because I have a drip system in my entire yard, so I don't water any more of that. Finding that picture, you can see part of it here. I weed whack it, and it's the type of grass that has rhizomes. So it's easily, with the good thing about using mulch is that weeds pull out of it pretty easily. So as I'm weed whacking, I just pull it out to maintain my original edge. So that's a great question, because I thought, now what am I going to do after I decided to leave that there? But my neighbors have dogs, and they used to dig under the fence. So I thought I need to have a little more protection from them digging into my yard. So that's how I handle that.
The other one was Tammy asked, can you please put up the address again for the website? But I do want to say that Kelly did put it in the chat, so you can also bring it up, but it is also in the chat.
Okay.
The website.
Here is the URL for the WSU website. Kelly has added this URL to the chat, or you can always call me if you can't find it and you're really interested in building a rain garden, and I would be happy to consult with any of you on this in this area. So I hope you enjoyed it. I've had a lot of fun with this. I've written articles for Senior Sunset Times. I've been on the garden tour. I talked at the Home and Garden Show. I gave this presentation at the Home and Garden Show, and now I'm presenting it to you. So hopefully I can put this in a box somewhere and not have to talk about it anymore for a while. But I'm always open for questions and any other concerns you might have. So,
Kelly, I don't see Randy's. For some reason, I'm not seeing everybody. So can you?
Yeah, so Randy's question was, do any neighbors complain about having goldenrod in your garden since it's such a high allergen plant?
you know what? That's on the other side of the yard, and this is my first year with it, and it's about 6 feet tall, and one plant is turned into a massive bunch of, it's just coming into bloom now, which is right on time for August. And so I have not had any complaints. But I know this goldenrod grows pretty well in a clump, and my asters grow pretty well in a clump. These are not natives. These are I can't remember the word for them. They're cultivars. And I'm using non-natives because they don't spread nearly like the native, especially aster, because they have seeds that go all over, and then they have their rhizomes that are on steroids. They can take over 10 square feet in a year, I think. So no, to answer your question, I hope they don't. I have my yard fenced, not that that would hold back any allergens, but I'm watching that carefully because I don't want that to take over the yard.
I think it'd be fun for you to put a fan up next to your tall goldenrod and spray it, spray all the pollen and the seeds to your obnoxious neighbors.
Well, I don't have any obnoxious neighbors. That's why I don't want to shake the boat here. So I'm trying to be very careful. I really enjoy my neighborhood in Elma. And yeah, they're all really good people. So even if they had allergies, they probably wouldn't know where they're coming from, is my hope.
You want to make some additional comments, Val, about the fact not only, of course, are you managing your water and your stormwater runoff well, but you're also creating a very successful habitat for
I am,
pollinators. Yeah.
yes. In fact, I was astounded last spring after which was the first full year of my rain garden. And I had all kinds of crawly larvae type things. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I mentioned that to Cindy Burton, and you know what she told me? That's what you planned for. So it kind of put everything in perspective. My biodiverse ecosystem is working, and I'm enjoying every single bit of it. And Doug Tallamy talks a lot about getting rid of lawn, shrinking the lawn. And I've done that pretty much. I've got maybe 90% reclaimed lawn. So I'm getting rid of weeds, and I'm planting with natives, and I'm using a lot of mulch in my yard, which makes the weed pulling once again a lot easier. So Doug Tallamy considers lawns as dead ecosystems because many people use herbicides and fertilizers, and they use a gas mower to mow them. So you're releasing oxygen or carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, and you're killing all of the microorganisms in the soil underneath that lawn. So if you have mostly lawn, I know it's easy to take care of. You can walk on it when it's raining and you don't get muddy shoes, but think about the ecosystem that you're creating with that area. So I've had a lot of fun with this project, and it's really coming together. My entire yard now is developed, and I have a drip system on everything. I have veggies that are growing, and I've got a pollinator garden that's huge and full, and I have all kinds of things going on here relative to pollinators and birds, and just I really am enjoying it. So I will also put out an invitation for any of you who want a firsthand tour of my yard. Just let me know. And I'm usually here, so call me up and give me a time if you want to come over, and I'll be happy to show you around and show you what I've done.
So Tammy wanted to know how long it take to complete the rain garden course. And then she wanted to know if you wanted to put your address in here on the chat, or do you want them to just call you?
I'm on the roster that now trainees have, I'm assuming. So my phone number and address are on that. I started February on President's Day of 2023, which has been 18 months ago, is when the excavators came. And the garden tour was July 20th, I believe, last year.
How long did it take you to do the course, the course? Yeah, the sort of.
Oh, the course is really simple. It's all self-study. So they test you a chapter at a time. You can take your time with it. I think I did it in like 2 days, but I was pretty motivated because I knew I wanted to build a rain garden in my yard. And now it's free. So, you know, you can take your time, and then when you're finished, they will send, after you enroll, they'll send you all their information so you can tell them when you're done. and you send them your test and they grade it so they know that you've passed the class, and then you'll get a certificate. And as far as I know, I'm the only person in Grace Harbor County and Pacific counties that have been certified as a rain garden builder. So I would like to have a lot of company on this list. So if you have any questions, be sure and call me.
You could probably unshare.
Is that about it?
So Kelly, do you have any more, or does anybody, I don't have any other questions.
Any more questions from anyone here? By the way, Val, I appreciated the shout out to Doug Tallamy. For everybody on the call here, of course, Doug is a rock star in our field, and really, really focuses on restoring habitat for pollinators, for birds, and for human health. So it definitely catch some of his books, which are all available in the libraries.
Exactly, and he also has an organization called Homegrown National Parks. And that nature's best, the best thing we can do for our ecology is for us to change our gardening habits. So the Homegrown National Park was established by him and a group of his followers, and people log in so they can tell how many acres they're reclaiming regenerative agriculture, or at least healthy ecosystems in the United States, which has been highly paved and built on, and
That's cool
lawns.
to have a database.
Yes, it is. It's definitely a database. Yeah, so it's kind of been fun to follow that.
Had people say thank you, and Brenda said this could be very helpful in her side. So
Brenda, I think this is easier than xeriscaping. So, or I'm sorry, whatever you were doing in your yard, this is a whole lot easier. So thanks everybody for listening, and I hope I've been helpful and maybe a little inspiration. So thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Val. That was very nicely covered. I think it inspires some of us maybe who haven't thought about rain gardens, but that also is a way that we're addressing soil health and actually water health, and it feeds into those very, very well. So if you haven't considered it, maybe take a look at your site. Also, again, this is something that it helps for us to have a working knowledge of, even if it doesn't work in your yard, have a knowledge of, so that you can help the public who may also express an interest in this, or to be able to encourage interest in other people who haven't thought of it before. All right, so I think we're going to move right into the last segment, and we will maybe wrap up a little early today, which is not all bad. So going from the collection of water, we're going to transfer over to the use of water. So and this is one of the priorities of Master Gardener, and that is water conservation. Now, whether we have to pay for our water through a municipal system. One moment, please. What? My PowerPoint's up. Is it not up? Sure. Okay, I was just told that I'm not sharing, so let's go back and share. Back to Zoom. Come on. Share. We're going to share this one. Okay, let's try this again. I'm on my slideshow. All right. So can everyone see this now? Does it come up? Okay, better. All right. Let's go back. And so we always want to use our water wisely. Whether we consider that we have an endless ground supply because we have a well, a home well, or whatever, the reality is groundwater is a limited resource, so we should always consider using it wisely. So in this segment, we're going to look at ways to create and maintain garden spaces that we can make the most of every bit of water that we have. Now, whether it's to create a new bed or looking to improve an existing one, the first step is to take a really hard look at the growing conditions of where you're going to place that bed and plan accordingly. All right, is that bed in full sun, partial sun, in relatively full shade? Is it exposed to wind? All of these will affect the amount of water that you're going to need to keep that bed growing. And it's important to be very realistic in your garden plan as to what will grow well there and what you should consider putting as related to the conditions of the site of where you're going to put it. Now that you've taken a look at it and decided what kind of garden or what style, you then also want to look at the soil that you're growing on. As we heard from Val, there's a wide variety of soils in our area. And each one of them is going to present some different aspects of what can and can't be done in an area. But it is something that you will want to address. Many areas, especially near the coast, are built on fairly sandy soils. Now, sand lets water pass straight through to deeper soil levels than what plant roots go. So it extends beyond the reach of the roots and doesn't do them any good. Now, by adding compost, we can somewhat address that. Compost works like a sponge. It absorbs water and holds it. And by mixing it in our soil, we hold that water in the area where the roots can access it. Now, the soil zone for many plants is anywhere from 6 to 18 inches deep. Does not include trees. Now, keep in mind, trees and some very large shrubs could go deeper than that. But in general, as a general rule of thumb, most plants are between 6 and 18 inches. So it's really important if we're amending the soil that we add that compost down to as deep as we can within that range. When you're starting with unimproved sandy soil, it is not unusual to add about a third of the finished volume into this to improve the water holding capacity. So that would mean if you're planning to dig down 12 inches in this, you put a 6-inch layer of compost on here and work it in. This is very, compatible with with what Valerie was doing to improve her soil, and you saw how effectively that improved how her plants were doing. Now, clay also presents as a problem in a totally different direction. It doesn't dry out as fast as sand does, but it clumps together so tightly that water cannot penetrate. Instead, we're likely to see it run off the top, which makes it very difficult to use water well. The treatment, of course, is exactly the same. Add compost. In this case, the compost has a much rougher texture, a very much larger particle than the sand does. So it breaks up those clumps of sand and prevents them from sealing off areas. It provides open spaces in the clay clumps that can be used by both the roots of your plants and for the water moving, irrigation water moving down in through that soil and then being held onto by the compost. All soils, doesn't matter if you have some of the most ideal sandy loam or other loams, almost any soil can benefit from additional organic, I use the word compost, but basically any organic material added to this that has been composted in order to create something besides the mineral base that the soil starts from. All right, so now we've taken a look at our site, kind of determined what the characteristics were. We improved the soil. Now it's time to decide what plants we want to put there. So we would need to look to select some plants that are best suited to the conditions of that site. One phrase that master gardeners often use is right plant, right place. We use this to indicate that a plant will grow best and reach its optimum potential when it's placed in a site that matches its growing conditions. Let's take that one step further in this case and say right combination of plants, right place, in order to optimize the amount of water that we would have to use to keep those plants growing optimally. Here are some pictures of 5 plants that have very similar water requirements. From left to right, we have astilbe, hydrangeas, hostas, fern, and a camellia. Now, all of these like their soil to be moderately moist consistently, and they all do very well in shade or part shade conditions. They will not perform as well if you put them out in full sun and drier soil conditions, if they thrive at all. So these are the kind of plants perhaps that you would use on the north side of a building or a shady area where they don't lose moisture as fast due to sun exposure. Grouping them together means that you would be applying roughly the same kind amounts of water to make all of them happy. You wouldn't have to account for other plants that take more or less water than they do, and you can time your water accordingly. And the fact that they are in a shady spot means that they don't lose water as fast. And again, this would somewhat cut down on the amount of water that you would necessarily have to give them compared to if you were trying to keep them going in a sunny spot. Now, if you decide that your garden site that you're trying to plant is a full sunshine area, you probably want to choose plants that are going to tolerate a drier soil and warmer conditions. Many of these can thrive with very little or even no additional water for most summers here. They might be labeled as drought tolerant. You might see that on the label. Sometimes that's a little iffy. Sometimes they'll be on a plant list that says drought tolerant plants. That's sometimes a little more secure. The Mediterranean region has an climate very similar to ours. So many plants that grow well in the Mediterranean will also grow here. They tolerate the slightly warmer, wetter winters and the dry, warm summers. Some characteristics of a plant that you might look for that would suggest that it might tolerate drier conditions would be ones with smaller leaves. You can see some of these do have that. Perhaps deeply lobed leaves. Some of them are fuzzy, as the Dusty Miller in the upper right corner, or even some with hairy leaves. All of these are things that reduce the amount of water loss through transpiration in the leaves. So here from left to right, we have echinacea, salvia. This would include sages, rosemary in the middle, and then Dusty Miller and lavender down below. Many of the plants from the Mediterranean, as it turns out, I won't say many, but a number of them are herbs that we like to grow, like rosemary or oregano, thyme, lavender, of course, another herb that is used. Sage is another one. These are actually come very much, will tolerate all of those soils. They come from Mediterranean regions and they can tolerate our drier conditions. But, before you choose any plant to put into a location, maybe you see this gorgeous blooming plant at the local nursery or your big box store and you think, oh, that would be so great. Well, you need to do a little research and make sure that it'll grow in the conditions where you want to put it. And it's important that you, again, group together the plants that will grow with similar needs for both sun and water. There's any number of plant lists out there. Both Washington State University and Oregon State do publish a very nice plant lists. They might be listed as Pacific Northwest plants. I think that's the Washington State University one. They might be listed as drought tolerant plants, but there are a number of other sources. The Sunset Western Gardener book has some very good lists of plants too. You may even need to just simply look up plants in a local database and see what their requirements are. But it'll pay you off to do the research before you put the plant in the wrong place and then have it not thrive the way you wanted it to. Now, grouping plants together like this that have a lower water requirement and tolerate a little drier soils, of course, will mean that you don't need to water as often or perhaps not as much as you would if you mix them in with plants that require higher amounts of water. And as you can see here, you can get some really lovely mixture of textures and colors even so. Native plants are often preferred. They are very popular and they are acclimatized to our area. Most of them have been growing, in our region long enough that they tolerate our wetter winters and a little bit drier summers. And for that reason, they're frequently used in landscapes. So it's important to know where they naturally grow. Where do they come from when they're in their native state? Just being a native plant doesn't allow a plant that's accustomed to shade or a moisture condition to thrive in a full sun dry area. So you need to match it up to where it grows naturally. The plants shown here are ones that can do well in sunny areas. That might not be the only place they're found, but they will tolerate sunny areas and moderate drought conditions. So from left, we have a vine maple, sea thrift, evergreen huckleberry, kinnikinnick, and mahonia or Oregon grape. These are a few of the choices. There's any number more, and some of them will be more or less successful depending on some of the cultivars that are chosen. And there are a number of different cultivars of any of these plants available also. Another choice might be evergreens. Notice how many of these have either very small leaves, or in the case of the conifer, they actually have a needle. This again reduces the amount of water loss through the leaves. Here from left to right, we have Pieris, Hebe on the bottom, Ceanothus, also known as California lilac, and then two types of junipers. All of these can tolerate fairly dry conditions once they have been established and got their roots down. There are any number of conifers. Many conifers actually do very, very well here, and they can be a nice add to your landscape structure. And one more thing not to forget, of course, is the ornamental grasses. These can add lovely texture and movement to your landscape. And quite often, these clumping grasses are drought tolerant. One word of caution, though, as a generalized group, grasses have a much higher risk of naturalizing and spreading to become invasive than some of the other plants. But with a little work, it does not have to become a problem. If you think back, a couple decades ago, pampas grass was a very popular, very large, beautiful, showy plant that could be grown almost anywhere. Well, because of that, it now has shown that it can also naturalize very effectively in our coastal growing conditions and can very much dominate its environment. By the way, some of them are, like pampas grass, are still available to buy, but they are on the noxious weed list for our state and for our counties. So if you're thinking about bringing in something that you're not real sure about, make sure you cross-reference against the state noxious weed list before purchasing a plant that could become a problem. All right, so now what do we do about an existing bed? I mean, we talked about if you're creating a brand new one, well, that's pretty straightforward. But, for an existing bed, a little more complicated, but we're still going to go through the same steps. We're going to take a really good look at the site. Don't look at what is, look at what should be, all right? Where is that site? What's its conditions? Take a look at its soil. What are you working with underneath this? All right. And again, make a determination of what would be the best use for a planting or a garden site in that particular conditions. Then you take a hard look at what's currently there. What kind of plants are in that bed right now? Now, this sometimes can be a really difficult decision to decide whether or not those plants should remain in that bed. This is especially true for some well-established plants that may have been there for some time, and it's kind of hard to let go of old friends. So the other risk is that some very large plants may not survive if you uproot them. Number one, they're big, so they're hard to uproot, but even if you can manage to do that, they may not survive the move, and that is a risk. But if you are truly trying to create a bed for the best use of the property, of that site, whatever, and use for water necessary to keep it at its peak, this might be a decision that has to be made. One way of perhaps improving the success rate of a larger established plant that has to be moved is to do it in the wetter periods of time, usually in the fall, when the weather isn't super cold yet, and yet there is sufficient rainwater to keep the soil moist without having to do it yourself and then perhaps not keep it damp. The next step you would do after you have identified your plants, perhaps moved out some that are not suited to that site or that don't match the watering needs of what you expect to have in that site. Your next one is, again, work in some compost. Of course, you can't do the whole bed, perhaps, but work in the compost in as large an area as you can. Right up to the root zone of any other remaining plants. Don't just work it around the immediate hole that you plan to plant a new plant into. You are trying to amend as much of that bed as you can, and again, as deep as you can. Fill in with the plants that you now have chosen that match the growing conditions and the water needs that you have decided on for that particular bed. So, and then what about the plants that you don't dig up? What about the ones you can't amend underneath them? Well, if you cannot amend the soil, you can still add a light layer of compost under these plants. If you, light layer, ½ inch to an inch maybe. If you add a little bit of compost every year, over time, it will help the plant. It's not immediate, but you're, working for the future here. Okay, so now we looked at the first 3 steps about creating a Waterwise garden, and now we've got plants are in the ground, right? So everything is ready to grow, right? Well, now we need to figure out how we're going to apply the water to get the most out of every drop. Large trees and shrubs generally survive with very little or no added water once they are established. This may be problematic actually when we have extreme heat or very, very long extended periods of drought or decreased amounts of rain that have not replenished groundwater to them. So it is possible that you could still see some drought stress in these. If you do, then you might need to give them some supplemental water to get them through that period. If you do, you need to water to make sure the water goes all the way down to their roots. Keep in mind their roots are probably considerably deeper than many of your perennials or flowers. So you will need to water for a longer period of time to let that water saturate down into where their roots need it. You will not water very often, but even just 1 or 2 waterings through a dry season can perhaps get a tree through where it might otherwise suffer from some serious stress. Very large trees may lose as much as 100 gallons of water per day through their leaves. So if you're planning a site from scratch, maybe you don't have a tree in, and your plan calls for you to put a tree in, really consider what the mature size of that tree is going to be. Whether maybe a smaller tree, one that'll top out at a much smaller size with less leaf canopy, might look just as good in that site as one of those very large trees. This will cut down on the amount of water loss, of course, through that. And it's something that starts way back in the planning stage, not after you've already got it in the ground. Watering perennial flowers or plantings, small shrubs, according to their needs. So you probably want to check the moisture if you're starting out, or if it's a new property to you or a new bed. You may have to actually check the moisture a time or two before you start to see if it needs to be watered. And again, after you have watered it to make sure that it's saturated or penetrated down to the depth of the root layer. Once you get used to what it takes, you can pretty much, judge your water application as needed, and you will get to know your beds. But to start with, there are some electronic moisture meters, probes, that you can put into your soil that can actually tell you how dry your soil is. Some of them work on some soils better than others, but it's worth trying. It's an easy way to run the probe down to different depths to see if the water is at that depth. If you don't want to use a probe or it's not convenient, you can just take a trowel and dig a little hole in between your plants down to the level that you want to know about the moisture and see where it's just very, very basic. In general, any annual definitely require more water than perennials do. Their roots tend to be more surface, usually between 6 and 12 inches. So you don't really want them to dry out much. Now, this would also include your vegetable garden. Vegetables are generally fall into this annual category, and they will require more water. You don't want to let more than just the very surface of their soil dry out, or their roots are pretty surface, so you will start to impact them if the very top of the soil dries out more than a very short depth. The established perennials and shrubs, in contrast, can actually dry out an inch or two of the soil before you really need to apply water because their roots are a little deeper. So you can certainly time your water differently depending on what you have planted in that area. Consideration, I think that most of us know, is the timing of water does make a difference. You want to generally water overnight or early morning to cut down on loss from evaporation. And it oh, just a minute, lost my train of thought here. Yeah, and just generally to cut down on the evaporation from the sun exposure and the heat of the middle of the day. Now, different plant types may have different root depths and watering needs, but 12-inch depth is often used as a general target when we're applying water. Now, the type of soil very much affects the speed at which that water will reach that 12-inch depth, of course. Just logically, sandy soils penetrate very rapidly. Clay soils, of course, are much, much slower. Now, a sandy loam can allow water to penetrate to a 12-inch depth roughly twice as fast as a clay loam. So you will need to sort of time your watering or expect to time the amount of water or length of watering applied according to what your soil type is. Now, of course, clay loams are known to hold on to their water longer. They don't dry out as fast, so you may not have to water as frequently. It's just that for clay, you need to apply the water slowly and over a longer period of time. And then you can probably space longer times in between applications. In contrast, sandy soils, of course, because they are loose, tend to dry out much faster. They absorb the water faster, but they also dry out faster. So you can apply water more rapidly but you don't want to apply as much or for as long a period of time, and you probably will have to water more frequently. Another consideration in using water wisely is how do we deliver that water from the source to the roots of the plant? Well, there's any number of different methods for applying the water, and each has some pros and cons attached to it. So the first one we want to look at is hand watering. It can be very personally satisfying to stand outside and water your plants by hand. You know, it's a nice connection to your plants. You can use either a watering can or a hose and nozzle of some kind. It's very relaxing. And sometimes this can be a very effective way on a small scale, but it's hard to water thoroughly and evenly and to judge the amount of water in a larger area. Sometimes you might want to use hand watering would include maybe just giving a little extra water to a newly planted tree or shrub, or maybe maintaining a damp surface for a newly seeded area. Container plantings are another one. Often require more frequent watering, but they're usually small enough that applying that water by hand can be very, very effective. Overhead sprinklers. I think we've all heard that this is the least efficient method for water application. I mean, it's said over and over again, but it is probably the best way to water home lawns. You would have to do a lot of beforehand planning for any other type of moisture application, and they don't always work very effectively. So even the best designed sprinkler system, though, is likely to have some loss due to water overspray landing on hardscape areas or places that you don't require the water. Fine droplets of water thrown up into the air, of course, are very prone to evaporation and loss of water through that, and wind, which we all seem to have a certain amount of, and can move that water around quite a lot, actually giving us some very uneven watering at times. If you're using this on something besides lawn, the wet foliage on shrubs or vegetables can have a little higher risk of disease, especially some of the fungus that seems so prevalent in this area. If an overhead watering method is used for upright plants, water in the morning. Give these plants all day long to let them dry out. This is a time that minimizes the evaporation when you apply it, but it gives the plants time to dry their leaves before the cooler temperatures at night encourage growth of organisms. Now, low pressure irrigation is the third type of watering that we're going to talk about. This would include drip systems and soaker hoses. Both of these methods deliver the water directly to the soil. So there is a marked decrease in loss to evaporation, as much as 60% savings compared to an overhead sprinkler system. There's a number of designs on the market, depending on your garden design, your plant needs, what you choose to use, okay? On the left, we have inline emitters in a drip system. These have volume-controlled holes or emitters spaced throughout the length of the tubing, and they're often used for things that are planted in rows. You can coil these under larger plants and actually effectively water a more broad area, the root zone of a shrub, but they're quite often used very well in garden spaces where things might be in rows. An individual emitter, as shown on the bottom, see it dripping away. Those are more likely to be used for single plants that there's perhaps space further apart. They also work very, very well in containers. If you want to hook up your pots on your deck to a delivery system, perhaps one with a timer or something, so you don't have to worry about watering your pots. Above on the top wire, we have a low volume sprinkler. This is something, some of these come on higher stands so that it'll actually put them above some low planted, say, vegetables or something. Those are generally used for something that either has a very dense planting, not in rows, or something like carrots or some of the root crops that you might actually do a more of a broadcast type planting system, and this will water that can, some of them are tall enough to water the whole area. On the far right, we have a soaker hose. These just ooze water along their length. They can be covered in mulch or something so that they don't evaporate off, and they can be also be very effective. Now, the water in all of these is generally delivered very slowly, and it's when it hits the soil, it spreads laterally as well as down. So things like a soaker hose or a inline drip line, you can expect it to actually penetrate the soil to about a 6-inch width on either side of your line, and then whatever depth that you give it time to penetrate to. Now, of course, that brings up that because we are delivering this much more slowly, you would have to plan to run these for longer periods of time. Now, once our water has been applied to the soil, the last step we want to talk about is keeping it there. We want to protect it from evaporation, from sun exposure. For landscape areas, the most common way is to apply a layer of mulch. 3 to 5 inches of mulch of whatever kind can decrease the water loss from the surface of the soil by as much as 70% when compared to bare soil. There's several different types of mulch to choose from. Pictured here, we have shredded bark, arborist chips, rocks, and straw. Now, some of these last longer and some break down faster. Some are meant to compost down and over a relatively short or long period of time. And the choice of your mulching material is yours to make. And you may choose it based on aesthetics of the finished product, depending on where you're using it. Or again, it may be that you'll use different ones in different places, depending on how fast you want them to break down and what your expectations from them is. There are also some non-organic options out there, primarily plastic sheeting or recycled rubber mulch products. These are really not recommended. Plastic sheeting can suppress weeds, I suppose, and can decrease evaporation, but it also prevents both air and water movement into the soil where your plant roots require that. So you're blocking it in both directions. Also, if you should ever choose to remove it, it does break down over time. It's not forever, but there will be some parts of it that really are sort of forever, and it can be a real nightmare to remove. The recycled rubber mulch is made from tires. A lot of it has been shredded or colored very much to mimic bark product. But keep in mind, vulcanized rubber used in tires contains a fairly high level of zinc and a number of other heavy metals that can leach into your soil, and high levels of zinc can actually be harmful to your plants. So for that reason, rubber mulch is really not recommended. Now, even though mulching is perhaps one of the most effective methods that we have, there are a couple others that can help to decrease your need for water also. One is selective pruning of your larger shrubs or trees. Keep in mind that in your winter to spring pruning, this actually improves on your need for water later in the year too. So removing any damaged or diseased wood that perhaps is not going to perform anyway will decrease some of the leaf canopy, and for an ineffective wood anyway. Another way is to do a light thinning. Maybe take a look at a woody shrub or a tree and very selectively take out a small amount of leaf canopy and still leave a very attractive shape. Now, avoid heavy pruning because when you prune heavily, of course, now you're going to stimulate new growth. That plant is going to want to replace that. And of course, new growth requires more water. So you would actually be working against yourself here. But a very light thinning, a few branches here or there can actually help a little bit. Another choice is in where you place your plants in the soil. So putting the plants fairly close together means that when they're in full leaf, their leaves alone will shade the soil. This does actually work very effectively. This might be something that is more commonly used in like a vegetable garden, where you would put your rows either very close together or use one of the non-row planting options. This by just simply by shading the soil with the leaves so the sun doesn't warm it directly, keeps the soil a little cooler and also prevents the direct evaporation. Now, we have covered a number of steps in using water wisely. Quite often, when somebody talks about decreasing water use, the first thought that comes to everybody's mind is what kind of sprinklers or what kind of drip system or how are you, applying the water to decrease the amount of water you need to use. But by covering this, we've seen that it starts way before you choose your irrigation system. So whether we are working to decrease our own water use or answering questions from the public, we should be thinking about including as many of those steps as possible in the conversation so that ultimately we can bring out the best outcome and use the least amount of water and still keep our plants growing in what we consider an acceptable level. And we can end up with some beautiful gardens. All right. Are there any questions?
Folks want to unmute and ask Jan some questions? Lots and lots of good info. And I've been posting some things on the chat and other thoughts.
I do have one more additional question, actually, or one comment until we get perhaps some chat coming up. And that is that one of the negatives perhaps about drip system is it's probably the most expensive for initial cost. So that sometimes can work against it, against people putting it in. It is sort of I don't want to say labor intensive initially, but it does take some planning and work, and there is a cost involved. It is, of course, then very, very effective once it's in place. All right. Do we have any questions? We're not seeing anything in the chat. Is there anyone else that has a comment or a question you want to bring up?
Jan, this is Val.
Yes.
I really appreciated your emphasis on compost and mulches. They're probably the two most important things we can do in our landscape. And in fact, I forgot to talk about the chapter 4 of maintaining a rain garden. The most important thing is to keep the soil covered, and that keeps out weeds, and it retains moisture, and the weeds are easier to pull. And anytime you get compost, you're going to have some residual weeds. So I have weeded my rain garden a little bit, but not that much. So it's just so important. I'm glad you emphasized that.
Yes, and mulch is perhaps one of the easiest, most accessible ways for anybody to improve their water retention in an existing garden. So we cannot, and then compost, of course, for keeping the water in the soil. We cannot overemphasize the use of those to the public when we're talking to them. One question here from, I think it was from Gail, about how do you get a drip system line across an area that you're not including? This might be a sidewalk or a lawn area. That is a problem. What you probably will need to plan to do is to install some kind of water access line in the ground, maybe in a small trench below the surface. You can run it perhaps along the base of a step if you have to cross a set of stairs and not create a trip hazard, but you really don't want a line exposed on the surface where it becomes a trip hazard. So it would be a matter of finding a way to put a tubing of some kind that's designed for in-ground application, and then bringing up a water connection at the far end where you want to connect your drip system to.
I wanted to.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to interject. I have my home in northern Arizona has a complete drip system on approximately 1 to 2 acres of my home there. And we have driveways, we have walkways, etc. And so when we were doing our system, we did put the like pipe, just plastic PVC pipe underneath any walkways, driveways, etc. You just can run your half-inch line through that and then come up and then put your spaghetti lines or whatever you want to continue on your drip system. And because I have timers at different faucets throughout my property there. And so it works very well just to put the water lines right through the PVC pipe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so really finding a way to install them underground, I think is the answer there too. And it doesn't have to be the initial drip line itself under the ground. You can just run some kind of PVC pipe that'll actually extend that water to a connector that you can attach to at the far end. So there are a number of options. And thank you, Tammy. You mentioned timers. Yeah, and there's a drip. Installing a drip system is very extensive. And there's a lot of options. Go out there and research it. I didn't try to cover them because it's just too much to talk to. It's a whole subject all by itself. A comment from Sue is using cardboard in walkways. And yes, in a garden area, you can put down Cardboard, you don't want it over the top of the roots of your plants. So caution, cardboard kind of blocks water, especially for the first year. So don't cardboard over the top of your shrub roots. But you can use it down walkways, put a layer of bark over the top to hold it in place. Very, very effective in shading that ground, both for weed control and for moisture control. Silica gel has been used successfully in container gardening. The last that I read was a paper from Linda Chalker Scott. She's sort of a very interesting guru of information and misinformation about gardening ideas. And her thoughts on it are that it is not effective in the general garden. Even though you could possibly use it in a container garden somewhat, it really is not, it's not cost effective and it doesn't work very well in a larger scope. All right. Did we miss any? Wendy, did you have some comments that you want to share with everyone going forward?
I do. Hold on just a second.
Now I am. Go ahead.
Maybe we don't. No, hold on.
Wendy, I've muted Val. You're unmuted.
Okay, so it's still rebooting. Can you turn your
Turn her speaker off.
Okay, well, that'll answer that. Okay, there's a couple of things. First of all, thank you everyone for all of the coming to all the classes. We only have 2 more classes left. Actually, it's September and October, and those are in person. Make sure that you get all your quizzes and your final done. All of your group leaders have the copy of the finals. So if you haven't received that from the area leaders, just email me and I'll be more than happy to send it to you. Any of us are here to help you with any of the quizzes. So it's really important to get those things done by October 12th, because that's when we have our launch for you going from trainees to interns. Yay. So, but you have to have that stuff done before the before October 12th. Okay. The other
jump in here, Wendy. I'm putting the deadline September 30th because we need 6 weeks to order the badges.
Okay, so you just have to have that done before we launch you off. So, okay. And again, we're here to help. The other thing is, thank you all very much for putting your hours into Give Pulse. I am actually going to share my screen real quick, if you don't mind. I need to find it first. So there's 2 ways. Can everybody see this okay? I'm not quite sure. I can't see anybody at the moment. Can you even hear me? Uh-oh. I won't.
Yes.
Okay, I have no idea where I'm at. So anyway, I will bring the screen back up. And there's 2 ways. There's the Give Pulse. And Kelly, for some odd reason, I'm having problems again. So if you want to put this web thing into the chat, that would be awesome. Make sure that if you see this, everybody can see my screen, right?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. Make sure you click here and then it'll take you to the bottom, because this used to really confuse me and you'd see this and go, wait a minute, I can't get in. So you need to make sure you click that and then you would be able to log in. Okay. The other way is to go through our Grace Harbor Foundation website and over here on Give Pulse, and you click that. And again, it will come in, you log in, it'll come to this page again. And you just click on that and log in. My screen is going to look a little bit different than anybody else's because I can manage stuff. But if you see Elena's her picture right here, then you're in the right place. And then if you need to add, so if I'm going too fast, let me know because I don't want to go too fast. So you'll see this if you need to add any impacts. And the chat is, for some reason, I'm not seeing anything other than the chat. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, so if you want to add an impact, you'll go into there. And for today, you will put in as Master Gardener trainees, you'll put in the basic training. Now this is one of, and so anytime we have basic training, that's what you'll put in there. And you cannot count lunches. Obviously today we don't have a lunch, but if you, I'll take this out later, but if you have the training from 9 to 3:30, make sure you change it to AM, and you do it till 3 because the training is actually only 6 hours. Okay, and then it'll tell you, okay, this was not AM. Okay, so it should come up 6 hours. And then you'll add anything that we've talked about, like today, we've talked about pollinators and water conservation and clean water and soil health and plant diversity, nearby nature, climate change. We've talked about all those today, and then you will add the impact. If by chance, okay, so then it'll do this little fun thing. And it'll show the impact, and then either I or Elena or somebody will go in and verify it. If you need to add another impact right away, you don't have to go all the way out of the screen. You can actually go to this little part right up here where it says adding impacts, and it'll take you right back to that other page. Yeah, and so then if you're working, here's the tricky part. Some of the people that have already volunteered, thank you very much for the garden tours, and most people have put in their hours, but let's say that as a trainee, you worked at one of the gardens on the tour, you would put in, because you're a docent, it would be other educational delivery. Because you have certain hours you have to put in, you want to make sure that you use those. You can certainly put, if you want to, I wouldn't put demo garden, you can put program support, but other educational delivery would be far better choice. If at any point you have questions on that, ask Elena and I, or any of your group leaders, they know. The only thing we do not use at all is the community gardens. We don't use that. So if you have a question, like if you're in a demo garden, that's where you're at. And yes, I do know that some of community gardens are attached to our master gardener areas, but we consider it you working in the demonstration garden. So it gets kind of a little tricky, but that's what you would put in there. Okay. And anybody have any questions?
I just want to make a quick comment, Wendy. I'm not sure that we're using stormwater education either. Is that correct or not?
Oh yeah, we wouldn't use this, the I don't even know if you guys see that, the PS session host, and we don't use the stormwater education. Plant clinics we use, community gardens, no. Continuing education, the trainees at this point, you will not use those until you become a certified master gardener. demonstration gardens, that's where we work, in any of the demonstration gardens. And of course, the basic training is now until through October, and then you'll not use that again. And then other educational delivery, we're going to be doing some workshops, both in Ocean Shores and in Elma area. And I don't know about South Bend, we'll find out. In the next few months, we're going to be doing some workshops. So you'll put that in other educational delivery, or if you were a docent at the garden. Program support is any time that you're helping with any kind of paperwork, or you're setting up tables, doing just stuff or going to any of the foundation meetings or your area group meetings. That's program support. The PS, whatever you don't use, staying mission, you actually have to sign up with that with WSU. And you can go on to your main page and it'll show in there and you can sign up for it. We don't use the stormwater education. And then youth outreach, we do use that. We used it at the fair this week. And by the way, the fair for Pacific County is, remind me, it's like the 23rd? I don't have my calendar in front of me. I apologize, Brenda.
August 21st to the 24th.
And they have a children's booth, I believe, there, so you'd be able to do youth outreach as well. Okay, any other questions or comments? But again, I want to thank everybody for coming out and really helping people, helping with the garden tours. You were out there at the fair where it was miserably hot or cold or whatever day you happen to go. And thank you everybody that helped Jude, and she's doing well, by the way, for the people that were at the fair. And Jude passed out. She's doing great. And then we do have the Seed Saver event. I know that Sheila put it into the chat that they're having a work party August 17th. And the really cool thing about this is you don't have to do everything in your particular area. I know that you're learning in particular areas, but you can go to South Bend and help them. You can go to the demo garden in Elma and help. You can go to the demo garden in Ocean Shores and help. All three of them are open to anybody that is a master gardener. They do have particular days that they do work parties. So you do need to make sure, as a trainee, you have to have somebody that is a certified master gardener with you. I know that gets a little tricky sometimes because they're small gardens and it only takes a few minutes to water some of them, but as far as our insurance and your safety, we want to make sure you have a certified master gardener with you. And until you become a certified master gardener, even as a trainee, as an intern, you still have to have a certified master gardener with you.
Wendy, can I make a shout out to Ilwaco too? Ilwaco also has a demonstration garden. We also do workshops. And so we have Elma, Ocean Shores, South Bend, and Ilwaco, and you can volunteer at any one of those 4 sites.
Oh, yes. Okay, and then Tammy did ask, do we need to go in and put in those, the training? Yes. So you should have training dates from January all the way, when you're done, all the way through October. So the answer to that is yes, you do need to do that. And then, of course, you still need to have your sheets signed. I can see Tammy has hers in her hand. And yeah, she can hold it up. I can see that. Anytime that you volunteer, you need to have a certified master gardener sign it. Any certified master gardener can sign it if they see you there, or you've been there and you forgot to bring your sheet, because I would do that. Yeah, there you go. There it is. Thanks, Tammy. So you would just have somebody sign those and then put it into Give Pulse. So it's really important for Give Pulse. This is really good example with Give Pulse as far as insurance. Jude, of course, was the people probably shouldn't have mentioned names, but when she passed out at the fair and we had a nice ride to the hospital, we needed to make sure that she was entered in Give Pulse, because if she needed to have an insurance claim, then she can prove that she was there. So it's really important to put everything into Give Pulse. And the other thing is, I keep track of that so that I give our county commissioners a report. Actually, I give it to Dan and he gives it to the county commissioners, but I give a report to WSU every month that says, hey, this is how many people have put in this many hours, and this is the work that we're doing. And it is awesome. Like, and I don't see everybody. We have 125 members. So if you don't put your hours in, I can't give you credit, our county credit, or two counties credit of the work that you have done. So it's super important because you guys are doing an awesome job and I appreciate it. We all do. Okay, now I've talked too long, so anything else?
Jen, you're on mute.
Today is today's class would be basic training. And then of course, if you're a certified master gardener, it is program support. And or it could be continuing education, because I don't know about anybody else, but I learned a lot today. So yeah. I can send you a copy, Peggy, of the timesheet, but I'll get it to you. If anybody else needs a timesheet, let me know. Any other questions?
Hey, Wendy, I was just going to say, we're going to have a study group in Ocean Shores, and I guess it doesn't have to be limited to just our trainees out here to go over the test reviews, quizzes and tests for the final.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, anybody is welcome to any of them. Like, I know that Elizabeth and Rhonda have they get together and they chat every week. I know that Elena gets together with the Ilwaca people, and I'm not sure if Brenda or whoever works with South Bend, but I know that everybody has an opportunity and anybody can go to any of those. And of course, you can contact either Elena or I. I'd be more than happy to get online with you and help you as well. We're in this together. We want to enjoy it. Any other comments? Okay, I guess I'm done. Elena, did you have anything else?
Wendy, can I make a comment?
Yes.
All right. Well, one of the things that I'm noticing working with the Montesano group and then having access to some of the others as I work in other areas is that this is really a group that admires and respects one another. And it is so nice to see that relationship building happening with them and within the group. So it makes my heart happy.
I know, me too. It's always exciting. Like I graduated in the 2022 class and we're all still really close. We all still go out to coffee. We all still go to do stuff together other than gardening. So it's fun to get to know people, and we have great people. They're just fun. Yes, we learn a lot. Like today I did.
So again, at the close of today's meeting, I'll conclude the recording, and we'll post it to be available for all trainees going forward.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for doing that.